Imagine standing at the top of your sport. You have 3 world championships to your name. You have set records that no one in history has ever touched. You have driven a machine that reaches over 330 miles per hour in under 4 seconds. You are at the absolute peak of your power. And then one day, just like that, everything stops. No final race. No championship send-off. No last burn down the quarter mile. Just silence. That is exactly what happened to Robert Hight. And once you hear the full story, you will understand why this is one of the most heartbreaking endings in all of motorsport. Robert Hight was not born into drag racing royalty. He grew up in Alturas, California, a small town most people have never heard of, with a passion for speed that had nowhere to go. He did not have a famous last name. He did not have connections. What he had was work ethic and a deep love for the sport. In 1995, he got his foot in the door at John Force Racing, not as a driver, but as part of the crew. He worked the pits. He learned every bolt, every wire, every inch of those machines. He became the facilities manager. And he studied the sport from the inside out while most people his age were still figuring out who they wanted to be. Then came the moment that changed his life. John Force, the most successful drag racer who ever lived, saw something in Robert Hight that others missed. In 2004, Hight became the team's first designated test driver, putting the car through its paces before the big races, absorbing all the danger so the team could perfect the machine. He was not just brave, he was gifted. And when 2005 arrived, Hight finally got his chance behind the wheel in a full season. He won on his 4th career start. His 4th. And he walked away with Rookie of the Year honors. The man had waited years for his moment, and when it came, he did not flinch. What followed was one of the most decorated careers in NHRA Funny Car history. 3 world championships in 2009, 2017, and 2019. 65 career victories, making him the 3rd winningest funny car driver of all time. 102 final round appearances. 84 number 1 qualifying positions. And records so jaw-dropping they sounded impossible. In 2017, he drove his car to a 3.793-second elapsed time at Brainerd International Raceway, a national record that stood for years. In 2019, he hit 339.87 miles per hour at Sonoma Raceway, the fastest speed in NHRA history at that time. Robert Hight was not just competing. He was rewriting the record books. But here's where the story begins to shift. Because as dominant as Hight was on the track, his personal life had its own complicated chapters. He had been married to Audria Force, the eldest daughter of John Force himself. Together they had a daughter, Autumn, who would go on to develop her own passion for drag racing. But that marriage did not last. The pressures of life in motorsport, the time away, the weight of working inside a family empire, it all takes its toll. Hight eventually found love again with his wife Leslie, and by all accounts, that relationship became the anchor that would matter most when the hardest moment of his life arrived. But no one knew that moment was coming as fast as it was. The 2023 NHRA season ended at Pomona, California. It was the final race of the year. Robert Hight finished as a runner-up in the event, and his championship hopes were close but not quite enough. He had been there before, fighting to the last round. He went home fully expecting to prepare for 2024. His team was strong. His sponsors were locked in. His crew chief, the legendary Jimmy Prock, had been beside him through some of the greatest runs of his career. Everyone assumed the next chapter was already being written. But what nobody knew was that behind the scenes, something was terribly wrong. In January 2024, just weeks before the NHRA season was scheduled to begin, Robert Hight released a statement that stunned the entire racing world. He was stepping away from his car. Not for a race, not for a weekend, for the entire season, due to a medical condition. And in the statement, he chose words that were careful, quiet, and devastating. I have to put my health first. Once this is resolved, I'll be back. No details, no diagnosis made public, no timeline, just a champion disappearing from the sport that defined him at the age of 54 without explanation. His seat went to Austin Prock. And the garage that Hight had dominated for nearly 2 decades suddenly had a different name on the door. What made this even more painful to watch was that everyone was left guessing. The NHRA community is tight-knit. These are people who see each other at race after race, weekend after weekend, for decades. And here was one of their giants, gone without warning. Reporters asked questions, fans worried on social media, and John Force himself, speaking at a press conference in Bristol, Tennessee midway through the 2024 season, gave an answer that was both reassuring and heartbreaking at the same time. He said Hight was not in the hospital. He was at home, but he did not want to come to the races. He did not want to answer all the questions. And Force, with the loyalty of a father, simply said, "I never speak for him." That image, Robert Hight sitting at home, away from the sport he had dedicated 30 years of his life to, watching his car being driven by someone else, is difficult to process. And yet what happened next made the story even heavier. Austin Prock, the young driver who took Hight's seat in an emergency, did not just fill the role. He excelled. He went on to win the 2024 NHRA Funny Car Championship, in the very car Robert Hight had been expected to drive. There is no villain in this story. Prock earned it. But there's a strange and painful irony in watching the machine you built, the team you led, the championship you chased for one more season, being claimed by someone else while you are away fighting for your health. By the end of 2024, the silence from the Hight camp was deafening. He had not appeared at a single race all year. Not one. There were no press releases confirming his condition, no updates on a return, no countdown to a comeback. In December of that year, reports surfaced that he would not be driving in 2025 either. Jack Beckman would take John Force's car. Austin Prock was locked in for another season with a new 3-year sponsorship deal. The picture was becoming clearer, even if no one was saying it out loud. And then in March 2025, the words finally came, officially, formally, and finally. Robert Hight announced his retirement from John Force Racing and from professional drag racing. Just like that, a 30-year career was over. His retirement statement was gracious and warm. He said he had 30 great years at JFR. He said being out of the car in 2024 had helped him realize there were other things he wanted to do, especially with his wife Leslie and his family. He thanked John Force for opening so many doors. And John Force, who had watched Hight grow from a pit crew member into a 3-time world champion, responded with a quote that said everything. "Family is everything. So as much as I'll miss Robert, I understand that he has some other things he wants to do." But between those words, between that grace and that dignity, there was a story of a man who did not get to choose how his racing career ended. A man who was taken off the track not by a rival, not by age, not by a slow car, but by something he had no control over. Robert Hight was 56 years old when he officially stepped away. The tragedy is not just in the departure. It is in the how. It is in the fact that he never got to park his car in the winner's circle one final time and say goodbye on his own terms. He never got that farewell race where the crowd cheers and the commentators replay the highlights. He went from the end of the 2023 Pomona final to a hospital bed and then a quiet home, and the sport moved on without him, as it always does. His records still stand. His championships are still his. His 65 wins are still carved into the history of the sport. But the man himself never got the ending he deserved. And yet, and this is important, there's another way to see the story. Because Robert Hight is still here. He is alive. He is with his family. He is with Leslie. He is watching his daughter Autumn chase her own drag racing dreams. He survived whatever it was that took him away from the track. And in the end, maybe the greatest victory of Robert Hight's life was not a 3.793-second elapsed time or a 339-mile-per-hour speed run. Maybe it was simply choosing his health, choosing his family, and walking away while he still could. The sport lost a legend, but the man gained his life back. And for anyone who has ever faced a health crisis, who has ever been forced to choose between the thing they love and the life they need, you understand exactly how much courage that takes. Robert Hight gave everything to drag racing. 3 championships, 65 wins, 30 years, records that may never be broken. And when the moment came to make the hardest decision of his life, he chose wisely. He chose himself. He chose the people who love him. That is not a tragedy without a silver lining. That is a man who raced harder than almost anyone alive, and then had the wisdom to stop. So if you are watching this and you are dealing with something difficult, remember what Robert Hight did. He put his health first. He chose his family. And he left the track with his dignity completely intact. Drop a comment below and tell me, How do you think Robert Hight will be remembered? And if this story moved you, subscribe so you never miss another one. Because the stories worth telling are never the ones about perfect endings. They are the ones about real people